Meandering about absolutely nothing. I'm going to invite Jimmy out. Jimmy Hirst, come out here, mate. There he is. Look at that. That's his name. So can you just give Jimmy a welcome? Jimmy's looking like Johnny Cash for me, which I did say I want you to be dressed like Johnny Cash, the man in black. So you've done that, Jimmy, and I appreciate it. Jimmy's actually going to keep... I just do want to acknowledge that Jimmy and a whole team of people have worked really, really hard to put on this two-day event. The polkadot crew do put a whole lot of the time, heart, effort, money into these events. So thank you for coming. But would you just say a special thank you to Jimmy and the crew that have actually putting this on?
And thank you very much.
No, that's all right. So Jimmy's going to keep talking to us about tiny homes because this is something that he is particularly passionate about, hence these days. But he actually has spent a lot of time travelling the world, looking, researching into this whole idea and how it can work. And he's going to look about tiny houses, tiny homes, like Lego. It's a future thinking.
I know.
So let's all, if we could just collectively do this, which will help Jimmy get to the future. There you go. So, Jimmy, you're on, man. Yeah, you're in the future. Because we are in the future from when we started that.
Welcome to the future.
Okay, see, that's his DJ coming out. Jimmy Hirst, thank you.
Thank you so very much, Tim. Been doing a wonderful job today. It gives us a laugh in amongst dealing with things. Just come in here, have a listen to Tim. We have a good laugh, and it makes us in a good space. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to thank my crew, our production people up here. The J has been an amazing venue, so I'm really impressed that we've had such a great turnout, and especially the previous panel was just incredible. We're pretty much full in here. So thank you very much for joining us. We hope that you get something out of the seminar, because this is what it's all about. So let's begin. I would also, well, of course, like to first begin with an acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and future as well. I think it's very important to acknowledge country, because I think the day that we as a society actually embrace and we unify, not reconciliate, but reunify ourselves and the Indigenous people of the country as one group, I think then we can actually move on to create a much better society. So thank you very much. Now, I'm going to just do a very quick recap of what we're all doing here today. We're talking about tiny houses. A lot of you here are very interested in affordable housing and interventions from the side. That's good. And what benefits tiny housing can offer. There's a few examples of some tiny houses on wheels. Now, some of the benefits, again, we'll recap some of the obvious before we look at the future. Why we love tiny houses on wheels is because you can go off the grid. Off the grid means self-dependency and sovereignty as well. It also represents downsizing and minimalism, so you can downsize. You have less things to worry about, less anxieties of things to look after and manage. Minimalism is also reducing your footprint on the planet and also leading a simpler life to allow the simplicity of experience and a more fulfilling life to fill the space, which is what being alive is all about. They're also obviously affordable, because these tiny houses out here range from $55,000 for one of those beautiful shipping containers, which would survive a cyclone really well and also look quite good, up to about $84,000 for some of the tiny houses on the front. And we've actually had the best tiny houses, we feel, in the Sunshine Coast on display. We couldn't facilitate everybody, and we definitely have taken the cream of the top for people to display their tiny houses here. In future, we'll have a lot more, because we want to support the whole industry, of course. But they are very good ones, the best on the Sunshine Coast, we believe. It also, yes, reducing your footprint's very important. Saving money and time. A mortgage for $100,000, probably a little bit more affordable than a mortgage for $350,000. $500,000. In Sydney, it used to be $1 million to buy a house. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. And saving time, well, it takes 15 minutes to clean a tiny house. It can take hours to clean a normal house if you want to clean it. So there are some real benefits there, and there's some yeses in the crowd as well, and especially if it's your job to clean the house. This is a really good proposition. And then we're looking at integrating smart house technology that hasn't really quite got into houses, and I'll be talking about some of that stuff very soon. Climate control systems. Look, the whole thing is the size of a large caravan. It can't be expensive to keep that air-conditioned or warmed in winter. It's a small space. You're not wasting energy with big, large rooms. So already you put the fan heater on, in a minute the bedroom's warm. That's your heating. You don't need to waste any more energy on heating. The same goes for summer as well. So there's some very obvious efficiencies we can achieve. Renewable energy, we can match this up. Renewable energy is becoming more affordable, more commonplace now. You can use wind power, you can use solar power. If you're fixed in a place for a longer period of time, you can go into biogas and have a biogas generator which will take your food scraps, turn it into methane, and then you can pipe that into the oven and use that for your cooking. And that's if you're situated a little bit longer than a few weeks, of course. So those technologies are all coming about again because we're looking at sustainability. They're easily transportable. This one here you can see is our polkadot tiny house that we've been building for a while. It's being driven by our four-wheel drive. That's a Toyota Land Cruiser. It will take 3.5 tons. If we don't like where we are or if we want to move somewhere else, we literally hitch it up within half an hour and we're gone. And I think that this is a new paradigm shift. The gypsies used to do it, but why should just the gypsies be able to move whenever they like? Why not everybody of any age group, of any demographic, of any wealth class, have the freedom to move in their own house? You can take your house with you. That, I think, is a new way of looking at stuff. The reason why it's a new way of looking at the old thing, we've now got these people called digital nomads like myself. We all work on our phones. We don't need workplaces. Our workplace is on the phone. We can travel the world. I used to walk through rainforests doing my invoicing because I hate invoicing, but I love rainforests. So if I combined the two, I was working. I didn't need an office. That was my virtual office. Like a digital nomad, we can now have geographical nomads again. And again, it's not just people who can't afford housing. It's for everybody. And to enrich your experience, to go and live with other people, learn different things. We love living with all the people that we do. My landlord is here today. Paul or Kadama is in the audience somewhere here. Put your hand up if you want to, you're not shy. But we've been, actually quite a few people around this clique have been our former landlords, and we love to come in, be really good tenants, and then move on and experience another person, another life. And we like to gift and help them as well. And it's an amazing thing. That's what it is to be human, is to be a good person. So these things, tiny housing, particularly on wheels, offer which our current housing model just doesn't do. And I think we're missing out and shortchanging ourselves quite a bit. All right, we shall move on because time will run away from us. So if we move on, and you don't need to own more stuff. So minimalising, oh, we've got a round of applause there, or someone fell over? Maybe the blade switched. All right. You don't need to own stuff. So we're all learning that, we don't need material possessions. We actually need experiences. We need valued connections with other people. The reason why we talk about this is because if we're going to design housing of the future, we need to know where we're going, what people will be doing, what does it look like, what does it feel like, and design to that. It's like building a ship without never knowing what a ship looks like, but you've got to try and imagine how's it going to work, where is it going to be? It's going to be in the water. So that's what I'm doing, is saying, well, let's understand what the water looks like before we start building a ship. Tiny house villages, a very important part of future living. We have been talking about eco-villages yesterday. They have some very good points for sustainability and sharing economy. They have some challenging points in terms of governance and everybody getting along with each other and agreeing. That can be quite challenging. So I have found that tiny house communities like these ones, we have the Blues Fest in Byron Bay. I call that a tiny house village, although not most of them are tiny houses. They're temporary dwellings that are small. Also Burning Man, which is the bottom picture as well. That's Centre Camp, Burning Man, which I attended a couple of times in the last few years. And that was amazing. And they all live in RVs. Not a sustainable festival at all, but it's a tiny house village because they're all in RVs, caravans, or if they're bold, tents in dust. And there's a tiny house community up the top there too. I've even got a point here and I can do this. All right, so let's move on. So this is what I found, that when we're looking at tiny housing, future housing, how do these fit into future living? They're like Lego to me, and they fit into a nice, more enlightened and more flexible living model. And communities, it's all about communities. We talked all about this yesterday. Communities that work. Some communities don't work too well, but ones that we do work are ones like Woodfordia. You're familiar with the Woodford Folk Festival. Most of you probably heard of it or been to it. The Blues Festival we just talked about, and of course, Burning Man once again. It's an amazing community. Irrespective of what you've heard, everyone's super cool, and it's a gifting economy. So people just gift, and that makes everybody feel good, and you also get free cheesy toast, free peanut butter jelly sandwiches, free cupcakes. We were actually at Burning Man once, and we walked around, and this guy came out and going, free dim sims, free dim sims. And we walked into this tent, which I called Dim Sim Disco, and they were serving free dim sims with a DJ playing music. So we had disco and dim sims, and it was great. If only society and life was like that every day. I'm saying, why almost can't it be like that? It's coming up in the future, because if efficiencies in industrial processes, and you've got the robots which will help build and do some things as well, we have now more time to do things with our lives that don't have to involve just process and work, being the industrial model that we're coming out of. So some obvious things for tiny houses and how they can be sustainable. Solar power is coming down in price considerably. You've got wind power as well. And also we've got glass, this lovely stuff, solar glass. There are a couple of gentlemen on the Sunshine Coast, one called Josh, who's selling these panels of glass which have solar panels embedded in them. So while you're looking out the window, you can be generating electricity. That's what technology is good for, because it enables new things to happen. So why waste the space? We've also got, obviously, composting toilets. So basically, the contents of what comes out of a composting toilet, depending on how your council regulates things, you can pretty much put the contents into a bio bag and put it in the bin. It turns into dirt. If you've not seen, if you lived on a farm, you've probably seen it happen. But our composters actually just turns into dirt after a while. It's not reusable because of all the chemicals we have in our ecosystems and our diets and our pills that we take. But, you know, one day maybe. I did find a toilet recently, an incinerating toilet, which in 15 minutes turns your doo-doos into ash. So it's a crematorium for poo. But that surely is clean to get rid of. It's been sterilised. You could throw that into your garden, almost. Also, these beautiful devices we've got on demonstration here. There's one upstairs and there's one downstairs. Just as you walk around under the stairs, there's a 60-litre thing called an atmospheric water generator. These are machines that I think are great. And I can't see why people are not going, what the hell, I need one of these. Well, they are a bit pricey. The one up there is a benchtop model. It's a 15-litre model. It goes for about $1,600. But it is limitless pure water which is drawn from out of the air. There's no additives, there's no chlorine in it because nothing has to be sterilised. It's remineralised, it's got a 5-step filtration process which reverse osmosis, it alkalizes the water, it remineralises the water, it cleans it through a carbon filter, and all I do is drink the water from my atmospheric water generator. I purchased one of them. Wally Iverson is a gentleman who actually invented it. And he's had his invention ripped off, of course, which has happened around the world. But he lives in Woodford. He's a local. And he can't seem to talk us into buying them enough. Cape Town, the government bought 3,600 of these machines when they had their recent drought. They work in a dry area. There's so much water in the air. There's swimming pools of water literally above our heads every day. And if we tap that, more of it will just evaporate off the oceans that are apparently expanding. And you can't run out of water. You can use solar power to power these machines. So once you've purchased the machines, they're sustainable. Combine it with solar, you've got limitless clean free water. No more dams needed, no more pipes needed, no more bus pipes, no more environmental concerns with that. It just comes out of the air. It looks like a water bubbler, and it pretty much is. And it also comes out the tap very cooled at 7 degrees Celsius. So please do feel free to sample. The one downstairs is a big model. Upstairs has already been drained empty. It's good for 2 people, but we do have, I think, quite a few hundred people here today. If you had to power it from electricity, it works out to be about 4 cents a litre. You're saving a bottle. I get my refillable bottles, and I just fill it up all the time. I've got the best water in the house. Oh, why would I want to buy a bottle of water when this is the cleanest water? The bottled water is not that clean anyway, and sometimes they barely even put it through a filter, so we're sort of being conned, and it's not helping the environment. Those plastic bottles can take up to 100 years to degrade in landfill. They're going to outlive us. We've also got these amazing houses that I found overseas. Passive Dom, you're welcome to take a picture of that screen if you're interested. These are amazing. They're just not on wheels, but they have vacuum insulated panels, which means that they're plastic printed, and they vacuum out the inside, so heat and sound become dulled or reduced. Strong structurally insulated panels. They're very strong, these machines, or these houses rather. They're totally off-grid. They've got their own solar, they pull their own water out of the air, they store the water underneath the floor. They also heat the floor, because these are made in a cold climate, so they're They're concerned about cold floors. They can heat the floor using solar power, of course. Fully autonomous. These can be recyclable materials. If we make materials that are not natural, as long as they're recyclable, I think that's not a problem. Sometimes natural materials, if they degrade over a period of time, you end up throwing the whole thing in the bin or demolishing the house. That's probably not so sustainable. So it's getting towards something which can be reused over and over again. The environmental efficiency is great. They also say that these houses are zombie-proof. So I think that's a delightful marketing strategy there for all the preppers. And the zombie apocalypse, which is coming any day now, along with the, we won't go on about it. Electric transport, when you partner these tiny houses with Polkadot, we're intending to, oh, there's music behind this. Don't worry about the music. This is actually video from a guy called Macca Reardon for Darren Walter's Ecotech electric bikes, which are on display here, just around the corner. And we arranged this for him, and it just looks amazing. He does these bike tours in Noosa. But Darren's very passionate about the environment and seeing the opportunity to not only do hires electric bikes and sells so many of them. He's got a great reputation here in Noosa. Is that electric transport is definitely one of the transports of the future. Hydrogen may come after that, but right now electric transport is about to go through the roof. He does scooters and bikes, and of course he's dreaming of getting that Tesla car, the Model S, one day. But in the meantime, I really love the work of people like Darren, who are not only trying to encourage people to look at more sustainable ways of doing things, but they're making it fun, and that's a really key thing. The bikes themselves use a little bit of power to make, but once you get that bike running and you maintain it, it's a lot better than having a car. And I've lived in Noosa for several months of last year, and I actually got around all of Noosa on my electric bike. There are so many bike paths, I think the place is abundant with them. So I highly recommend checking them out. If you're not sure about bikes, they have electric trikes, which you stand on. They're like Segways, but a lot more affordable. And also the scooters are pretty cool. You may see the scooters appear in Noosa in the near future in an organised fashion. Currently, they're all talking at council about this. Noosa, fantastic and well done for trying to do things more sustainably. So moving on. So there's our Polkadot tiny house. There's my partner Kimberly, who's been modelling the tiny house. She's in the same dress today. We've been building this for a little while. And we're aiming to have all the things that I've been talking about reflected in this house, and also make it a smart house as well. I'm going to show you the design. This is just a take on... We wanted to come up with a house that we thought everybody, and a design everybody would be compatible with. We didn't want to build it on several levels. People like bedroom lofts, but if you're elderly or invalid, I'm invalid. Got myself there. Keep it all on one level so you can get into the house. Here we have, this is the queen size bedroom, which is slightly oversized. Then we have separate living area here, composting toilet, and the shower in the middle. So there's a buffer space in between where you sleep. Someone wants to get up early and cook bacon and eggs. There's the lounge and the dining room there. We've got a gas stove. We have obviously a kitchen sink, I believe, a fridge, and another lounge as well. So two people could live in that comfortably. Separating the living areas, a lot of the tiny houses like to be open plan, but I think even when you partner, you want to have some privacy sometimes, and you want to like sleep in, or with the case of myself and Kim, both sleep in. So we're quite bold being awake this time of day, right? So this is our design. We thought that's a very basic generic that a lot of people would be very happy with, and to be honest, we kind of just borrowed the idea from the top line caravan, because it's called the Club Lounge design. Now, this is where it gets interesting. In the future, I'm seeing a future where to have a tiny house, you don't have to spend, $80,000 or $100,000 to build such a large house that we could live all entirely off the grid. If we had these communities and cities where you could just plug in your house, all you really need is your bedroom. Here we've got a Murphy bed that folds up. And of course, we've got a composting toilet on the same level and a shower. You can do some storage here. Live minimally. That house could come to a cost of $35,000, cheaper than any tiny house. Medium to large enterprises could build these more efficiently, using composite materials, using natural materials, not necessarily recycled, because it's not always the best way to go. It's not efficient, and it can be more unsustainable than just using fresh products. However, what we do have here is that the A folding bed, of course, can convert to a dining room or an office. A table can fold out of it. If you've ever seen Inugati's tiny house, he has a table that folds out of the bed underneath. You can then plug it into solar and water. You don't have to all have solar power yourself, especially if it does cost a bit of money. Plug into that sort of stuff. Dwellings can provide these things for you. You pretty much have a luxury bedroom on wheels, and I think that is going to be the future, but I'll explain to you more in a moment where it gets really interesting as to why this is probably where it's going to end up. With these houses, you could tow them up to a building, lower them away, wheel them in, blow them away on a chassis. You should be able to tow them with just a good car. They should be light enough to be towed by just a car or an SUV. Of course, we would be building them to, well, not building these at the moment, but building to transport and building codes, of course. No further approvals will be needed. This is all you'll need in the future. But again, it gets more interesting. What we're doing, if we combine the polkadot tiny house at the top, which is that design there, and if we plug into it a luxury bedroom on wheels, so dad can get some sleep when we have kids, then you've suddenly got a whole living area, you add a deck in, you have more space, you don't feel so claustrophobic. But mum and dad can pick up those two dwellings. The car can take the luxury bedroom on wheels. The four-wheel drive will take the bigger tiny house. The whole thing's off the grid. We can travel around and bed down anywhere. A farmer's property, move for work, move to the mines if that's your vocation. Take your house with you. I think that's the benefit of having a tiny house on wheels. And this is what we call the L-shaped design. It's not our idea. This is just a very good idea, which we've seen some people build over the years. Now, I'm going to flip things around a bit. A lady called Kelly Dendal did a study for Aging in Place in association with the Smart Living Society, who are with us as well today. They've got the little marquee out near the side gate where people sneak in. And she found that in Mullaney this was for, a study under Claudia Baldwin at the University of the Sunshine Coast Sustainability Research Centre. And she presented this model where legally under the existing planning, you can build a house with up to 12 bedrooms. Now, you still got to get it past council, but you're legally allowed to do that. But if we just added 5 bedrooms, that would probably be decent enough. But with these pods, like the luxury bedroom on wheels, you don't need to own the stove, the kitchen, the whole lot. What if you turned up to a house which had that already? In fact, we already have that model. It's called Airbnb, except the bedroom stays in place and you can't take it with you. But what if you could just anchor your bedroom out of an Airbnb and just run? Why can't we do that? It actually fits within planning because you've still only got one dwelling. And then you are also allowed to have a secondary dwelling. So reasonably, within maths and engineering, you just pick up your bedroom, own the bedroom, so you own something, not paying rent all your life, giving your money to other people. Take your bedroom with you and plug it into a house. It would fit under the building codes, providing everything is the boxes are ticked in terms of building codes. So there's an idea that I pivoted from their idea of allowing people to stay as they get older, not having to go into the nursing home. It's expensive, it's more affordable, but also better for people if you bring a community to them. So it all connects together in a minute. Now we're looking at the future of tiny houses. This gets very interesting. So what we have here is one of the Tesla cars. There's only 19 moving parts in this chassis here that you can build a car on. And this is from Tesla. They're all independently motored wheels. This is solar powered. You can charge it for the charging station, which is on solar panels. We're still using coal at the moment, but we'll get off that soon, hopefully. And then in the future, people like Toyota are pivoting their whole business. They're not building cars anymore. They're building self-driving living vessels, what we could call hotel rooms on wheels. And that's, I guess, a future look at it. It's an artistic impression of what the future could look like, but don't get too distracted. It looks like the Jetsons, but it doesn't have to. I think you should be able to build what you like. But it's the technology behind it. It's the idea behind it that we're very interested in. And so we're seeing a future that some people are talking about where if we treat tiny housing like Lego, think about this one. Try and get your head around this. A Lego hotel for tiny houses. Now, I'm not telling you I'm a fan of this, but it's about the imagination and showing how far we can go. If we're occupying lots of land space and we're trying to be more efficient and give people options, imagine if your bedroom, you could hire that like a mobile telephone bill. You'll hire your bedroom on wheels for, $70 a month or whatever, because they would be affordable and cheap to do. And then you can plug it into a games room, you can plug it into a jacuzzi, you can plug it into a living room, plug it into a laundry. You can treat housing like Lego, because we now have the technology and the composites to be able to do this. Where it gets even more interesting is imagine if, as self-driving cars and vehicles come into fashion, these hotel rooms on wheels could drive themselves more sustainably. Instead of flying to Sydney, you could talk to your hotel room and say, okay, Google, I'd need to be in Sydney for a meeting tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Can you get me there? And it will say, yes, we'll be leaving in 3 hours, and it will take you down the Pacific Highway. That's entirely going to happen one day, and you will be delivered well slept while you sleep in your tiny house on wheels, and you'll turn up to the meeting the next day. And that's sustainable transport. You've reduced your footprint, you're not catching a plane and wasting fuel in the air. And that kind of is a bit of a glimpse into what can happen in the future before we turn into flying cars, of course. There are safety concerns, but all the bugs are being worked out in San Francisco right now. But generally, a lot less people get run over by a self-driving car than a drunk driver. So do consider that. Not the justification for it. So with these hotel rooms, it'd be nice to socially engineer these future hotels of luxury bedrooms and wheels socially. So people come together and they're actually induced to connect with each other. And that's what if we treat housing like Lego, it gives those options. And then it comes up to us to set up new systems to guide and manage these things, systems that we haven't had before. But thanks to the mobile phone, I guess this is an angle that Polkadot wishes to explore, because it's not an area that many people are looking at, is that we do see it a great opportunity for helping set up an open operating system for sustainable communities in the future. Much like TCP/IP is for the internet, while you're doing your emails and your messages in Facebook, you don't know, but there's a lot of connections going on in protocols called that TCP/IP, which is the operating system of the internet. And an open source one, decentralized, so it can't be controlled and manipulated and corrupted, and retain honesty, integrity, so it can actually govern people authentically. And that's one great thing about blockchain technology. It's brought about this beautiful decentralized governance reminder that we don't have to centralize all our systems, we can decentralize them. And then we can connect people peer-to-peer. They don't need to go through a bank or a third party necessarily if reputation being earned keeps them on a good keel, keeps them honest. So one of the things that I've got a friend of mine working on, who also used to be a landlord of mine, called Bert, he used to do programming for an insurance company, is we're looking at doing an Airbnb for tiny houses on wheels and caravans as well. But a few differences. These disruptive industries like Airbnb don't necessarily have a social conscience. They have an answer to shareholders. They have to make money. And I think we can, with blockchain technology and consensus-driven models, is allow councils and local communities to make decisions on what they would like to have in their given area. I think they have sovereignty and the right to do that. Noosa certainly exercises that. They have a few arguments and get bogged down, but it's good that they're so proud about trying to get their region right. And I think that's really important, is that they do have a say. So through these apps, using artificial intelligence to help us out, we can help administer the sort of governance which is fair. So rather than people being disruptive and coming in and just choosing to live somewhere because they feel entitled, is that it would need to fit into a given region. But I won't go through all the things. That's for more detail on our website or our Polkadot Face group on Facebook, rather. But smart contracts, digital reputation accrual, decentralized and distributed peer-to-peer exchange of value and work done, equity and trust, and helping communities actually socially engineer positive outcomes. And that's the great thing that these mobile phones can offer. But there's a lot of bugs to be worked out in the meantime, so rest easy. Our programmers have got a lot of work on their plates. So anyway, as we look into the future, we're looking at doing a future event. We'd like to make this engaging. We're looking to work with people who are really serious about reaching the broader audience with any idea to contribute towards helping building a more sustainable and also more community-oriented society, because that's an efficient, environmentally more sensitive society as well. So we've decided to partner that with fun. And so we're looking for a location we've been talking to is Aussie World. We may be turning up to a theme park in the future. And a lot of people are kind of twisting their nose going, well, if you're doing an environmental event, why are you going to a theme park like that? It's because we actually want to go beyond the choir. We don't want to preach to the choir. We want to preach to the average person. We want to make it a coercive and a delightful process where people are invited in a good, engaging, positive, celebrative atmosphere to consider how we could do things more efficiently with the environment and sustainability, like having a solar-powered sewing machine. Anyway, there will be more information coming about that, and we're very interested to talk to people, especially community groups, who can do that. I'm now getting the walking post.
You know,
I
was coming out because I thought that was my slide because it said fun's our thing.
Yeah. Well, there you go. So there you go. You can look forward to that. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. Thank you very much for being here for the talk. And thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank me.
Thank you so much.